To say, first of all, thank you all for spending your Sunday here. I'm Andrea McClellan. I represent Super Ward 6 on the Norfolk City Council, and you are here to join us for this civic workshop called Show Me the Money. This is part of the Engage Norfolk series, and I'll give a plug again at the end, but hope to see you in person on March 20th at Scope for Engage Norfolk. We will be having that event from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. this year. There'll be free parking at the Scope parking lot. And we have over 100 organizations already signed up for the Civic Fair. It promises to be a really great event. In the years past, we've had these civic workshops at the event, but nobody ever wanted to leave the Civic Fair to go to a room to listen to people. So we decided, because everybody does Zoom now, we will do these in advance. And so we're going to try this out. And I can't imagine, I can't think of a better group to do this with, and a really more timely subject. Talking about money in the city of Norfolk. So how do we assess taxes? How do we collect them? And then how do we spend them? And that's really the life cycle of money in Norfolk. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So some rules of the road. We are recording this. My goal is to be able to post this for those who aren't able to make it. So just want to let you know that. If you can remain on mute, especially when our speakers are talking. If you have questions during the event, I'll moderate those. If you can put those in the chat area, that would be great. And after each of the speakers talks for about 5 minutes or so, we'll then go into a Q&A session with them. So make sure to put those questions in the chat, if you will. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce all of our speakers, and then after I make the introductions, we can get started with our Commissioner of Revenue. So speaking of which, Blythe Scott, our Commissioner of Revenue. Blythe was born and raised in rural Halifax County. Her father, I love this bio, her father owned cows, repaired televisions, and worked in a manufacturing plant before realizing his dream of opening a small grocery store. So she understands small businesses. She worked at that grocery every day after school, and really instilled in her a strong work ethic. And her mother also worked as a bank teller for many years. So she learned the importance of finance in that role as well. Blythe graduated from Princeton University and the University of Virginia School of Law, Wahoo Wah, after which she went on to practice law and manage both large and small law offices for about 19 years. She came to the Commissioner of the Revenue's office as Chief Deputy about 4 years ago and became the Commissioner of Revenue in April of 2021. She and her husband are the proud parents of 3 adult children and have lived in Norfolk for 19 years. Following Blythe will be William Pete Rada. We just call him Pete. Pete graduated from Columbus State University in Georgia. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Community Planning and Development. And Pete has worked in the assessment profession in North Carolina for many years, several decades before coming to the city of Norfolk in 2017. Pete, I'm not sure this was in your bio. Yes, here it is. I thought this was pretty cool. Pete has actually been the president of the International Association of Assessing Officers. So not only is he known in North Carolina and Virginia, he's known internationally, and we are very lucky to have him in the city of Norfolk. Our treasurer, Dawn Hester, is a lifelong resident of Norfolk. She grew up in the 5 Points area and graduated from Norview High School. Go Pilots. My son also graduated from there. She currently serves as the treasurer of the city of Norfolk, and she's the first female to lead the office. Women's History Month, good call there. She was sworn in on January 1, 2018. She's also a former member of the Virginia General Assembly, representing the 89th House District. Prior to that, she served on the city council in Norfolk from 1996 to 2010, representing Super Ward 7, and also served as vice mayor during that time between 2004 and 2008. And she holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Virginia State University, where she graduated cum laude with a degree in education, and a Master's of Arts degree in Education and Human Development from George Washington University. And lastly, Greg Patrick, who I like to call our Director of Finance, but he's actually our Director of Budget and Strategic Planning. He honestly could do all of those jobs. It's been a lot of fun working with Greg in the city of Norfolk. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get Greg's bio in advance, so you're just going to have to suffice with his Twitter bio. He is a hater of watermelon. Who knew? He also is a Virginia Tech Hokie and all around great guy. And he's been just a great budget director, and he's won several awards because of his work in the budget office. So without further ado, I will turn the floor over to Blythe Scott, the Norfolk Commissioner of Revenue.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Councilwoman McClellan. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. Thank you to all of my fellow presenters. I love working with each one of you. And I just have to say it is an honor and a privilege to be Norfolk's Commissioner of the Revenue. I'm going to start out actually with just a little bit of the history of the office so that you understand. The Commissioner of the Revenue is a constitutional office. So it was created by the Constitution of Virginia. Myself, Dawn Hester, Sheriff Barron, Commonwealth's Attorney Ramin Fadahi, as well as, why am I drawing a blank? George Schaefer is our circuit court clerk. So I'm going to read something because I think this summarizes it kind of kicks off everything. The Commissioner of the Revenue is elected to serve the citizens of the Commonwealth by establishing the value of property for purposes within my jurisdiction and applying the tax rates established by their respective governing bodies, our City Council. It is the Commissioner's responsibility to carry out the laws of the Commonwealth and the locality as these duties are performed. The Commissioner of the Revenue is one of the closest units of government to the people. As such, the Commissioner's office must provide courteous and knowledgeable service and assistance to the citizens it serves. So that's what I try to do every day. But just so you understand, I don't work for city management. I don't work for the City Council, meaning I'm not beholden to them. I don't work directly for the governor or any part of his administration. I work for the citizens who vote for me. And so I'm very appreciative to be in the office. So with that, let me just tell you a little bit about what taxes I do assess. I handle personal property and business. Miss Pete handles the real estate. So that is something very distinctive about our town, about our city, okay? Is that there are other places where people live across Virginia where their Commissioner of the Revenue does handle the real estate, but that is not the way it happens here in Norfolk. So just be aware of that. And again, forgive me, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm going to read something else to you just to hammer it home as to what my job is. The Commissioner of the Revenue assesses various taxes pursuant to state and local law. Assessment means assigning a taxable value. The City Council sets the tax rate that is then applied. Value is assigned in various ways, including industry pricing guides, as well as self-reported amounts. So again, just to be clear, my office, we use industry standards to determine the value of your cars, for example. Let me tell you a little bit about the organization of my office also, so you understand that part as well. So I'm at the top, okay, as your elected official. Then I hire, and the people work at my pleasure or at will in my office, meaning I hire a chief deputy. I also hire an admin person, and I also hire an IT person. And this is very critical because I want you all to understand, although I'm part of the city IT, I also need someone in my office who can handle a computer issue right in real time, right? I also need someone who understands our software because it's not something that's used by the public necessarily. We need to be able to do that work quickly for our citizens. And so that IT person is very important. And then I have 3 separate teams. Audit is one team. I have a personal property team, and then I have a business revenue team. And each one of those teams has, a different role in the office. For audit, it's just like what it sounds like, okay? I have a team of people. Some are accountants. But and I have a supervisor, but the main thing is that they're auditing. And I want you to listen to me here. The audit team is not just auditing individual businesses or individuals. That's not what it is. We, as a locality, also audit what we receive from the state. There are some monies that come into the localities that we need to make sure that the dollars and cents match up to what we're due. Okay, so my audit team is the one that handles that. Again, I'm speaking very broadly because I can never talk about specifics because there is a secrecy code that both Ms. Hester and I are bound to, where we cannot divulge information just willy-nilly to the public or to the city council or to a city, employee. So we take that very seriously. Personal property, let me talk about that a little bit. I use an industry pricing guide in my office to determine your car values, your boat values, your motorcycles. And what used to be called NADA is now called JD Power. So I use the JD Power, and JD Power is national, right? So the value of cars is not just based on 10 cars in one really wealthy part of town. It's a national service. And it's the standard that most places use across the Commonwealth of Virginia. Some localities further west and further north, where tractor values are more important, they use a different service. Well, we don't really have a lot of tractors and bulldozers here driving on the streets of Norfolk. So we use JD Power. The next line of taxes that I want to talk about are the business taxes, business licensing and business taxes. Those are self-reported. So again, I want people to understand it is handled by my office and we process those assessments, but businesses are responsible by code and by statute to report that they're doing work here in our city. So forgive me, I'm going to read just so I don't mess anything up. For business licensing, all business and professional operations, according to Norfolk City Code Section 24-25.3, must purchase a business license before commencing operation in the city of Norfolk. This includes home-based businesses and special events. Excuse me. And then there's business tangible property. Tax is levied on personal property employed in a trade, business, or profession. Okay. The word employed, that is a critical word because we use our phones for both personal business and we use it for business. So the definition is employed to do that work. Okay. Machinery and tools. This is something that's also a little wonky to some people. I just want you to know about it broadly. Dry cleaners, manufacturers, miners, processors or reprocessors, radio or television broadcasters, and water well drilling businesses report and pay taxes on machinery and tools only. Okay, that's a lot of words, and the folks who it applies to, they know it. So just so you know that. And lastly, I handle sales and fiduciary taxes. These are also self-reported. These are your food and beverage taxes. So here in Norfolk, there's a 6.5% on prepared foods. And then on top of that, the businesses are to collect the state tax that they have to pay to the state. Admissions tax. These are for places of amusement or entertainment that charge a fee for entrance must collect an admissions tax. Okay. These are your concert venues. These are, the events you go to around town. There should be an admissions tax, and those admissions taxes are reported to us. Lodging tax. Fixed rate per room, per night for hotels, and per night for homestays. Those are our Airbnbs, our VRBOs. And then lastly, transient occupancy tax. That's based on a percentage of the room charge. So this is kind of a broad way to look at it, but just so I can hammer it home to everyone. The bottom line is my job is to assess as much property is garaged or in the city of Norfolk, okay? And I assess these values. Those values are then applied a tax rate that is set by city council, okay? So once you're doing the math, at the end of doing that math equation, the value times the tax rate per 100. Am I doing this math right? I have to look at Greg to see if he's making fun of me yet. Then that tells the treasurer, hey, this is how much this person owes based on the assessed value of what they own. And then is the treasurer's responsibility to collect. Okay. Now, the way our offices interact, this is just an example. You sell your car, right? Well, you've got to tell us you sell your car. So Ms. Hester may have you've gotten a bill that says you owe on this car. And you say, oh, wait, I don't own this car anymore. Well, guess what? Before I can adjust your bill or before the treasurer can accept your money, my office needs to do something, right? Because here in Norfolk, we have proration, okay, of vehicles, not business cars, but personal cars, okay? So that's just an example of how our offices have to work hand in hand. And the other piece that most of you will probably know, I do have a DMV Select in my office, and the DMV Select is not a full service DMV. We can do the smaller things. Cannot issue a driver's license, but people can come in for title work. And there's a list. I have it on my website of things that we can handle. But again, my office needs to work hand in hand with DMV and the DMV information so that I can let Ms. Hester know, hey, this person owns this car. This is the value of the car, and she can generate and have the bill and the bill be paid. Okay. Andrea, would you mind putting my slide up? And I just wanted you all to have this information about how to get in touch with us. So I know I heard the scuttlebutt about, my office is closed. Obviously, I don't want to rehash the pandemic, but there was not a single day that the staff of the Commissioner of the Revenue's office was not in the building working. We worked every day. And although that meant you couldn't get to us, we were inside those walls working. So I want you to know we're going to have new walk-in hours next week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 8:30 to 3:45. But I highly recommend everyone, we have really streamlined so many of our processes that if you email us, we have a record of your contacting us and we can work whatever problem you're sending our way. Our goal is to provide the services. We're here, and I have a wonderful office of public servants. I think I have 30 employees at this point. And so when you see the phone number, and we all know this to be true, you call the phone number. There's not a person who can just pick up the phone right away. However, if you email us, we can both have that trail so that we've received your email and we can respond. Because unfortunately, calling the 30 people who work in my office doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be able to pick your phone call up right away. So I think with that, Andrea, that's really all I wanted to cover. Other than to say, if there's a question I don't know the answer to or something that you want to ask offline, please feel free to reach out to the Core Web Inquiries or call my office. I'm there every day. And I love my job. I love the city. And I'm really happy to be here with you all today. So hope that was good, Andrea.
Thank you, Blythe. That was very helpful. I really appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go from assessing cars and businesses to the homes where we live. And so with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Rada to step up. And Pete, would you like me to bring your slides up?
Sure, that'd be fine.
You want to do a quick intro first?
Well, my name's Pete Rada, and as you heard, I spent many years in North Carolina in the assessment business and have made my way to Norfolk, Virginia, and thoroughly enjoy working with the city, the citizens of the city, and of course my city council. I am not an elected official. I am appointed directly by the mayor and council, so I report to the mayor and council. They do my performance review, if you wanted to know that. But as a result, I don't report to the city manager. So although I work closely with the city manager, and Greg Patrick, who you'll hear from a little bit later, Greg and I are best buddies this time of year because he's very interested in potential real estate revenue. Can we go to the next slide? I just want to give you a little bit of a background about real estate and ad valorem taxation. Ad valorem is Latin for according to value. And as I'm sure you have figured out, that we try every year to determine the value of real estate in the city of Norfolk for taxation purposes. We have annual reassessment. Not every jurisdiction in Virginia does that, but all the bigs pretty much do. We have quarterly assessment and billing. We are held to a fair market value standard, which means we're supposed to appraise the property as best we can at market value. And then the fourth point is that we try very hard to have uniformity in what we do. It's not fair, for example, to apply one set of values to one property and then maybe something different somewhere else. So each reassessment year, we use the same schedule of values, if you will, and apply that to the properties within the city. Let's go to the next one. The effective date of our reassessment is July 1, but the city code requires us to complete the reassessment for each year in February. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So essentially, we work very hard in the fall of the previous year, and we check everything thoroughly, and then we mail the notices out in March. And sure enough, next week, our reassessment notices are going out. We'll be turning the file over to our printer, and the notices will be going out. Some people may receive their notices as early as late next week. That begins the informal appeals period. And what an informal appeal is if somebody calls our office and says, hey, I want to talk about my assessment, we call that an informal appeal. If people send mail to us and we check that mail, we consider that to be an informal appeal. Basically, all the appeals that we handle up until the end of May we consider those to be informal. The formal appeals, which goes to a separately appointed board of review, the deadline for filing those appeals is May 31st. Now that's a quasi-judicial matter, and it's much more formal. There's an official docket, and there's some rules as far as how we operate the board of review. But the appeals become a much more serious matter when they reach the board of review level. The reason why I pointed out that the board of review is separately appointed, the city council doesn't hear real estate appeals. They're the wrong people to call. Now, if you want to call your council person and say, hey, Andrea, I don't like that value that Pete Rada put on my property. Well, that's fine. You can do that. But what I've asked Andrea to do is just send me an email and give me the information and how to contact that person. And that's where I take it and run with it. The city council does not hear real estate appeals. Next slide, please. Because of those deadlines, which I was just mentioning, our reassessment, especially one coming up for 2022, is going to be based on the previous calendar year sales. So that means January 1 through the end of December of 21. Our office actually analyzes every sale that is recorded at the clerk of court. And we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we're using what we call valid sales when we try to measure what is happening in the real estate market. A valid sale to us is arm's length transaction. The owners, the grantee and grantor are not related, for example. Sometimes, perhaps if it's a family-related sale, it may not be reflective of market value. But we put a lot of work into validating sales. And it is worthwhile to note, too, that there's a 6-month lag between the final sales analysis and then the effective date of the reassessment, which is July 1. That's a little different than what I'm used to from North Carolina, but it's all fine. It's just as long as we all know the rules, we'll be just fine in what we do. Next slide, please. This is the definition of market value. It turns out, you may not be surprised to hear this, but when we send out reassessment notices and people call in and want to talk about the market value of property, it's interesting to note that people sometimes have different versions of that. The official version came from a court case from 1958, and it basically says the price that the property will bring when it's offered by sale by one who desires but not obligated to sell it, and bought by someone who is under no necessity of having it. Another way to put it is, like, if it's a foreclosure sale, is that really arm's length? Well, actually, no, it's a forced sale. And in a case like that, we would not use that type of a sale for our value analysis. But that's our definition, and it's the one that is used across the Commonwealth. Next slide. Market behavior is the key factor regarding reassessment. What this means, our office measures market behavior. Our office doesn't create market behavior. Market behavior are the actors in the marketplace, the buyers and the sellers, the realtors, all the people that do all of that work. we march along right behind that. So we are analyzing historical data. So even if the sale just occurred 2 weeks ago, that's historic as far as we're concerned. We didn't influence, our office did not influence that sale. So we're looking along right behind the marketplace. We have, oh golly, almost 8,000 sales. Our sales are definitely up over the past year, obviously. And so we analyze every one of those sales, as I said before, trying to find what represents true market behavior. So again, the key here is market behavior. The assessor doesn't determine what that market behavior would be. Next slide, please. This is, I kind of threw this in to give you an idea of what's been happening with real estate assessments since the year 2000. This goes back quite a way, but you'll notice from like 2004 to up to 2009, the real estate market was increasing significantly. And you remember the run-up that was happening in the real estate marketplace prior to the recession that started in 2008, but really didn't manifest itself in Norfolk until about 2010. Now, when I say it didn't manifest itself in Norfolk, I'm talking about as far as our real estate tax base. People were feeling the impact of that recession before that date. But real estate assessments always follow behind the market. So again, it took the city of Norfolk a year or two to recognize what was happening in terms of our tax base growth. But you see, we peaked in 2009 and then the assessments went down. And we did not recover to the same place we were in 2009 until about 2018. So that was a deep recession and it lasted quite a while, and it had a definite impact on Norfolk and our revenues. Another thing I mentioned about that during that same time frame, you may remember this term called sequestration. It was a fancy way of the federal government saying, well, we don't know what the budget's going to be, but we're just going to appropriate some money. Here lately, we've had a real budget. And let me put it in very frank terms, we've had a real budget for the Navy. And that's important for Norfolk because when that real budget occurred, now the Navy knew how much money they had to spend. Now we knew how much money was available to go to the shipyards and repair the fleet. So our economy started picking up locally when sequestration went away. But you'll see we're on another one of those climbs right now, and our values are climbing up again. I do think that our values are going to slow down next year. I don't think we're going to retreat. I think there's still going to be some increase in the marketplace, but I think probably a combination of interest rates increasing and probably a lack of property available in the marketplace. I mean, last time I checked RAIN, the city of Norfolk only had maybe about 400 properties listed. That's a very low inventory of homes available just in the city of Norfolk. So next slide, please. Now, just like Ms. Scott did, I want to show you, we've got our phone numbers here for you to call when you get your assessment. If you don't agree with it, just call us. We're there. And if we can't answer your call, because sometimes we get more calls and we have people to answer them, if it goes into voicemail, don't worry. We check those every day. And so we'll get back to you very quickly. You can also email us at real.estate@norfolk.gov. And another reminder that the appeals to the Board of Review have to be in writing. There's a form available on our real estate assessors page and other information that may be helpful to you as well. So in conclusion, yes, I'm the assessor, and yes, I'm the guy to call if you don't like the value that you see in the next couple of weeks. And we will also be releasing the values citywide for 2002 around about the 1st of April on Norfolk Air and in open data. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pete. That was great. And we're just going to keep moving right along, and we're going to get to the questions. And I have a list of questions myself as well. After we finish up, we'll do a sort of a round robin. So I'm going to now go on to my favorite city treasurer, Miss Dawn Hester. I'm going to make sure that I pin you. There you go. Thank you, Dawn, and welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us too on this Sunday afternoon, especially when it's so pretty outside. So I'm just going to follow up. And of course, I am, yes, the collector. So it is assessed by Blythe. It is assessed by Pete. But yes, we are the ones who have to say, yes, you owe it and you have to pay it. So we have a great team. And there are 30 of us in my office, including me. We are broken down into 5 divisions as well. We have real estate, personal property, business, accounting, and then our cashiers and receptionists. And of course, our cashiers are the ones who are face-to-face with the public when we're open to the office. So how do we collect? So the majority of you know the main ways, because you will receive your invoice. You've received your real estate invoice for your March 31st real estate. Those have been in the mail. If some are in the mail and should be in your hands by now, I hope. And we also have supplemental personal property. And that's for individuals who have purchased cars recently. So we try to keep up with that by sending you your supplemental personal property bill so that it doesn't get so high or seem so high. We accept, of course, cash payments, certified checks, money orders, credit debit cards. If you use a credit debit card on the phone or in the office, there is a convenience fee attached to that. It is for the ability for you to be able to use your card. In the past, before my time, it was passed on. The city picked it up, and so many people started using it, it became a burden. And so it was passed on to the customer to use. And that's why we still have all other options that you don't have to pay a convenience fee if you do a money order or a check. We now have, because of COVID, we were able to get a drop box in front of City Hall. So you are able to drive by, not get out of your car, drop your check, envelope, money order in the mail. We pick them up twice a day, daily, Monday through Friday, and we process them as quickly as possible. We haven't talked a lot about the number of pieces of mail that we have. And I'm not going to give specifics, but there's a lot of mail. So if you look at every house in the city, just imagine, just you're riding around in your neighborhood, everybody has, not everybody, many people have at least one car, a lot of people have 2. So we're mailing bills for that. We're mailing bills for real estate. If it's a home, someone pays for it, whether it's the homeowner or the person who is renting the property. It has to be assessed. Same with our business and offices. And all of those pieces of mail come back to the treasurer and some to the Commissioner of Revenue, because the Commissioner of Revenue and I, our offices collaborate on the business taxes. Her office, once the bill comes back in, they have to assess it to make sure that it's right. They check it off, and then they bring a batch over to us for us to process for the collections piece. And so it's a lot of mail that we have to touch every single day. There's not a day that goes by that we don't get mail, but every single day we have to process. So anyway, that's another story. We'll come to that another time. But we also, for other ways that we collect taxes, if someone becomes delinquent, let me say this first. If you're having challenges, or you know someone who is having challenges paying their bills, have them call us or email us, because email is better too, but have them call or email us. We will work with a taxpayer. But if you don't contact us, then penalty and interest accrues on your account, whether it's real estate or personal property or business. So you're paying more. And I don't want people to pay more. I want you to pay what you owe. So there are things that you can do that I want to talk about after I go through these collection pieces that will hopefully help, and you can share that with your neighbors and with your friends. Debt set off is one way. So it's tax time now. We're filing our taxes with the state and with the federal government. We don't deal with the federal government, but at the state level, if you owe taxes, we can intercede and get what you owe in delinquent taxes from what would have been your tax return. Now, a taxpayer does have the option of paying that amount of money back, because it takes about 6 weeks for us to get the money from the state. But once you get the notification letter from the city and from the state that the debt set off has been processed for your tax refund, you can make the payment yourself. We release the debt set off with the state, and the state will send you your tax refund. But that is one way that we can collect. We can also do wage liens. So we know where you work, and we do look that up. We use LexisNexis to find out where people work. We have not done that since COVID started, because we just felt that it has been a hard time for people in general. But we're going to have to do it. And so, but some people, so we can work with your human resources office to deduct a certain amount of funds from your pay every 2 weeks to cover what you owe for your delinquent taxes. And we have a few taxpayers who, because they need assistance with that, they just set it up themselves with HR, with their HR department, wherever they work, to then pay. And it's just a certain portion, penalty interest continues to accrue, but it's a way that they know that they can make the payment so that they can pay their bill. We can do bank liens. So we can lien your bank. We can do rent liens on real estate for, say, a person who owns property and he's renting the property and he's not paying his real estate assessment, his quarterly taxes. We can lien the rent. The rent will come to us and he will not get the rent for the month. We also can do boot and seizure for your cars specifically, but also for hotels, restaurants. I mean, we have the ability, and when I say we, the treasurers of the state of Virginia have the ability to lock an office. We have the ability to go into a restaurant or into a business and tap a till, which means take all the cash that you have in your till out to pay your debt. I haven't done that yet. And a lot of that has to do, yes, with COVID, because I was getting ready to do it before COVID started. You know, we want our businesses to be successful. So we do try to work with them in different ways. But that is an option that we have. So I just wanted you to share, I wanted you to know some of those things that are available to you. And I'm going to be running out of time in a second. But I wanted to say that too, one of the things that we've tried to do in the office is to automate the office even more. And by that, I mean, I'm trying to reduce how much mail we have to touch in the office. And in that, we have partnered with Invoice Cloud, which is a company that allows us to you to make your payments online. And in that, you can also sign up for e-billing, which means we don't have to mail you a bill. You will get an email notification about they will email the bill to you. That means the city does not have to pay to mail the bill to you. And so it reduces, one, the cost, because that's also my responsibility, is to try to reduce costs for the city, because the city means you citizens, to do that. So since we've put Invoice Cloud in place, and I'll tell you, it's not where I want it to be yet, and I'm talking about the system itself, but we have had, let me see, 6,731 people to date have signed up for paperless billing. So that's that many bills that don't have to be mailed. And the minimum mailing is around 49 cents. even though we're doing bulk mail, because mailing has still gone up. We have 264 people that signed up for automatic payment. I sure would like to boost that number. But anyway, we will get to that point as well as it evolves and grows and people get more comfortable with it.
Hey, Don, can I interrupt real quick? How does somebody sign up for those? Is that on your website, or where do they do that?
The e-billing on the website. It's a link to e-billing. It'll bring up Invoice Cloud. You register, you do your own password. Now, with everything on the website, you need your account numbers. And so thank you for that, Andrea, because just like we keep up with our credit card numbers and our check account numbers, keep up with your personal property and real estate and business account numbers with the city as well. Because we have many people that email us and just say, I need my account number so I can pay. Because if you're trying to pay online or on the phone, you have to have it. So that's one of the things. You keep that with your locked up things so that you know exactly where they are.
And somebody asked, is it possible to put that information on the bill about signing up? Is that on there currently?
Back of the bill. Most people don't look at the back of the bill.
Oh, okay.
It is there. It's on the back of the bill.
Great.
There's a lot of writing on the back of the bill. I tried to reduce that and make it better so that things could pop a little bit, but it is on the bill.
Okay. And I'll put up, if you okay, can I put up your slide with your contact information?
Yes, you can. And I'm just going to share one last thing because I did mention that. And one of the things, you can go ahead and put it up. One of the things that I noticed was that when I got into the office and I was looking at numbers, that we had a lot of accounts that were in delinquency for like 5 or 6 years. We partnered with a collection agency. It's called the Taxing Authority Consultants. And they are a collection company, and they have helped us collect since I think October 2019. I think we started with them an additional $5 million that was on the books that the office did not have the ability to go after because we don't have collectors in the office just to concentrate on collecting past due items. So they have helped the city collect $5 million additional dollars to go into our coffers. We're still working with them, and each year we add an additional year, so we'll be working with them for quite a long time. So that's enough for now, and I look forward to the questions. Thanks, everyone.
And this is the information. So please, if you want to sign up for e-billing and invoicing and paying online, I think that's certainly a great service. So well, now we're going to move over to Greg Patrick, who is our Director of Budget and Strategic Planning. And Greg, would you like me to pull your slides up?
Yes, please. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon or early evening, everybody. It's nice to be here with you on a Sunday. As everyone said, it's beautiful outside, so it certainly shows your commitment to civic engagement that you are with us here this evening. I'm going to do a quick overview of the budget and some of the important aspects of the budget this evening, and try to get through these slides relatively quickly and to questions. Next slide, please. So first, what is a budget? And this is the best definition that I've seen. It is a planned, itemized summary of money that is coming into the city and how that money is spent over a specific period of time. And the most important thing to understand about a budget is it is a plan, and it is based on a lot of assumptions. They are assumptions that we spend a lot of time researching and understanding, but it is built on assumptions. And like all plans, they are subject to change if your reality changes throughout the year. Next slide, please. Important budget terms and concepts for Norfolk specifically, and mostly throughout the state of Virginia. Fiscal year versus calendar year. This confused the heck out of me for about 3 years when I started with the budget office, but we function on a fiscal year. Our fiscal year begins on July 1st. Most everything in everyone's life functions on a calendar year. So when we talk about the budget that is upcoming, that council will vote on, that the city manager will propose later this month, and the council will vote on in a couple of months. We refer to it as the fiscal year 2023 budget, even though it will take effect on July 1st, 2022. So that can be confusing. One of the biggest differences between a budget, a local government budget in Virginia, and the federal budget, which is what most people hear a lot about on the news, is, we can't fund the budget with deficit spending. We can't issue debt to pay for operating costs. So every year we have to have a balanced budget. We can't spend any more than we generate in revenue. And that is a good thing. That really should be how everything works. Next, what I will call fun with funds. This can be really confusing when you're looking at a municipal budget. But we have all sorts of funds, and when you think of a fund, just think of an operating unit. The general fund is most of the city's day-to-day operating needs, and general taxes go into the general fund, and the general fund pays for all of us who are on this call today: police, fire, human services, parks, recreation, libraries, so on and so forth. And this is the general fund is what the information we'll go through in the next couple of slides really focus on. The capital fund, this is the fund through which we make large investments in infrastructure across the city, new buildings, large maintenance projects on buildings, and it is funded with some combination of cash and debt. And in Norfolk, it's more debt than cash. And then our non-general funds, these are the independent operating units within the city. So think your water bill, your wastewater bill, your stormwater bill, your refuse collection bill. These are all operations that are self-sustaining, and they exist within their own fund. Structural balance, this is really important. We want ongoing revenues to meet ongoing expenses, so we don't want to pay for ongoing expenses with one-time revenues. City council school board relationship, this is super important. City council appropriates money, that money goes to the school system, and the school system decides how to spend it. Once the budget is adopted, the city council cannot influence how that money is spent. And Dillon's rule, this one is very frustrating for me, a budget director. Basically, the city of Norfolk has no authority, not expressly granted to it by the Virginia General Assembly. So if we say, hey, there's some unique issues in Norfolk, we would like to build our government financing around, well, we can't do it, because unless the General Assembly gives us authority to raise revenue in a specific way, we are not allowed to do so. So it is, and the revenue architecture that exists in the state of Virginia is not beneficial to urban core cities across the state. So I will just leave you with that. Capital versus operating, we basically covered this in the last slide. Next, yeah, and okay, so let's take a look at our current budget. This is our total spending plan for the city of Norfolk for what we're calling fiscal year 2022. General fund, which is what we'll focus on, 930 million. The total spend plan for the city, more than $1.5 billion. The important thing to remember here is you may hear a lot of comments. The city doesn't have much money. The city can't afford to do X, Y, and Z. The city, we have enough money to do anything we want, just not everything that we want. And that is the absolute core mission of budgeting, which is prioritizing resources. Next slide, please. So here you'll see your breakdown at a high level of the general fund revenues that we generate, 930 million. You'll see in Pete's area, 270 million plus from real estate taxes, consumer taxes, sales, meals, hotel, cigarette and admissions, about almost 90 million. Other property taxes, this is personal and business property, $54 million. There's a much more detailed breakdown in the budget document or through a number of links on the budget office's website that you can break this down even more. Next slide, please. On the expenditure side, you will see that the single largest expenditure is Norfolk Public Schools. It's important to note that not quite 2/3 of this is money that flows through our budget that the state provides for categorical aid. And we combine that with our local contribution to Norfolk Public Schools, which is in excess of $130 million this year. So after Norfolk Public Schools, there's the next largest expenditure grouping is other departments and services. That's basically everything except Health and Human Services, public safety, and then our debt payments. Next slide. How do we develop a budget? This is really important. This is what we do. This is what we focus on for a good chunk of the year. First, we're going to take a look at how our last budget was organized, and then we're going to remove any one-time revenues or expenses. So these are costs that occur only once, or revenues we receive only once. We're going to annualize prior year actions. So if we opened a facility midway through the year, we're going to make sure we fund an entire year's worth of expenses there. And then probably the most important thing that we do all year long, and what I work so closely with the assessor, the commissioner, and the treasurer on, is to project revenues based on our current tax rates. I say it's the most important thing we do because if we get this wrong, one of two things happens. Either we spend more money than we're bringing in, which is really bad, or taxpayers have paid more money than they needed to for the level of services that we are providing. We are typically very, very good at this, although I will tell you, COVID has made it much, much harder and there's much more uncertainty. And then finally, projecting expenses that are required to provide the current level of service. The reality is every year costs more money to provide the same level of service that we're providing this year. We want a good understanding of whether or not we have enough revenue coming in based on our projections to cover the expenses that we expect to incur just to provide the same level of service. Next slide, please. This is important as well. There's really two budgets. The city manager will propose a budget in March. That budget will be handed to city council. As the mayor likes to say, the manager proposes, the council disposes, and then council will ultimately vote on their budget in May or June of this year.
And that budget will be presented on March 22nd, I believe.
March 22nd.
In case folks want to tune in.
And then next couple of slides are resident participation in the budget process, resources that are available for residents, and how you can participate in the budget process. Next slide. We have some online resources. The first is taxpayer receipt. I love this one. You put some very basic demographic information in that we do not collect, and it will give you based on demographics and the information you have submitted, a receipt for roughly where your tax dollars go and give you an estimate of what your local taxes, your total local taxes are. Next slide. Balancing Act gives you more information about the budget, how money is spent, and allows you to adjust how you would like to see spending made, and then submit that budget to us, and we kind of collate all that information, put it together for council and the city manager. Next, attending public hearings. There will be this is an old picture. If I had staff working on a Sunday, I would have updated it, but I didn't. The next way to participate in the process, go and speak to council at one of the public hearings. This works. I am telling you, if council hears a lot of people saying the same thing, it has an impact on what ends up in their budget. Next slide. Attend or watch council budget work sessions. There's lots of ways to do this. You can watch live. You can watch recorded meetings, but it'll give you a sense of what council's thinking. Next slide. And then finally, every resident of Norfolk has 3 representatives on city council. Everyone has a ward representative, a super ward representative, and of course the mayor represents every Norfolk resident. So if you have concerns or questions or thoughts or priorities for the budget, you can talk to your council people as well. And I think that's all I have.
That's great, Greg. I really appreciate that. And if you want to spend another Sunday afternoon with me next week, we're going to have a Zoom called Advocacy, how to get the ear of your elected officials, where we'll talk about how best to advocate for your budget priorities. And my recommendation is a little teaser. Don't wait until the public hearings. Let us know what you want in the third or fourth quarter, because that's when we're starting to put the budget priorities together. So I would highly recommend you make sure to reach out to your council representatives early rather than later. It's always very helpful. So with that, I'm going to ask some questions. I've got to figure out how to, sorry guys, I've got Greg up here. A couple of questions. One question that I've heard a lot of folks ask, and Greg, you mentioned the special funds for water, sewer, trash, refuse collection, and we get in Norfolk a HRUBS bill. Who sends that out? And I know there's been some concern about some delays. Could you, I don't know who wants to take that one, or if you want to say it's somebody else's issue, I don't know.
So I will, I don't have an in-depth understanding of this process, but the city does not mail the HRUBS bills. They are mailed by HRSD, who is the wastewater treatment organization regionally. They do our utilities billing for us.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's see, Pete, here's a question. Can you tell us the difference between an assessment and an appraisal, and why they oftentimes aren't exactly the same?
Well, appraisals are typically done by independent fee appraisers, and the typical appraisal that people will see is done for home mortgage purposes. An assessment is done by an assessor's office, and we use a mass appraisal technique. We look at all the sales in a given area, and our requirement is to apply what we know to all the properties and come up with a market value assessment for all the properties within that universal sale. The fee appraiser concentrates on one property. We concentrate on all properties. And as a result, when you apply mass appraisal techniques, there can certainly be a difference between what the independent fee appraiser comes up with versus what the assessor's office can determine the value to be.
And when somebody appeals their assessment, does that frequently result in a change, or how? What's the typical? I know it's property by property, so it might be a tough question to answer.
Well, it is property by property, but we always start with making sure our data is correct. You know, we don't always get to go inside of the home. So we're basing a lot of what we know or think we know on the exterior of the property. And it may be based on prior knowledge. Maybe 3 homeowners ago, we were in the house, but things change over time. So the first step is to make sure our data is correct. And more often than not, when a change occurs, it's because there's been a change in the property that we just weren't aware of. So just getting the data correct usually results in most of our appeals being successfully resolved on the residential side.
Okay.
Different matter.
Sure. I appreciate that. Let's see here. I know that there's a lot of folks asking questions about sort of expected higher bills this year because the used car market has gone through the roof because we can't make new cars because of the chip lack of chips available, as well as, everybody decided they wanted to move to a different house during the pandemic. I think I'll take that one. So what does that mean? And what it means is the commissioner, the assessor, they assess things. It's up to the city council to determine what that tax rate is going to be, or if we provide relief or rebate. And we're going to be having those discussions. I think we'll be having a discussion this coming Tuesday specific to car taxes this year and how we might address that as well. So stay tuned there, but we do recognize it's going to be tough for folks. There were a couple of questions about relief for seniors, and I believe the tax relief for seniors is handled not by the treasurer's office. Dawn, can you help me with that, or Greg?
I can at least share. It is not handled by the treasurer's office. The applications you can get online. We also have the application in our office, but it is handled by Human Services. So all of the applications are sent back to Human Services with the required documentation regarding income. And this is an annual process. So if a senior is on senior tax relief, they have to file their paperwork every year in order to stay on tax relief. So it's not just automatic once you get it, because incomes change and things like that. And so, yes, and those applications are available now. They are due in the office, I want to say June 1st. And so the earlier you get it in, the better, because you also want to make sure that you have everything that they require, because there have been instances when a senior will forget something and they don't include it, and then they don't get senior tax relief for the upcoming year. And so we do home visits with seniors that we know have challenges, but senior tax relief on your real estate is an option.
Okay.
Of course, I can talk about this a little bit more, but we do have relief for veterans. And so that is available too on one vehicle. So there are different types of relief that are available to certain individuals.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I want to be cognizant of the time. I know it's 6:03, but were you guys willing to go up to 6:15 to get a couple more questions in real quick?
Sure.
Okay, we'll try and
Sure.
wrap it up real quickly. I know that I'd gotten a question, Greg, this is a good question for you when you're thinking about the budget coming up. Because of the past year, we've talked about how many positions we weren't able to fill. Our staffing levels were really affected by the pandemic. So as a result, are our expenses that much lower? Does that mean we have that much more money to spend?
So this is a complicated question. So looking at fiscal year 2022, how are we performing against budget? Well, on the personnel side, we're tracking well below budget because we have a tremendous and historically high number of vacancies. When we look ahead to fiscal 2023, we certainly take that into consideration, but we would not budget for $15-18 million of savings in the budget, because the reality is we want to fill those positions. We intend to fill those positions, and if we budget to have an extremely high level of vacancies in that next year, just to get back to where, in order to get back to a normal level of staffing, we would have to add a tremendous amount of money back to the budget. And the hardest thing to do in budgeting is increments up, right? Funding the base is what it is. We assume that that's in the budget from the start, but funding increments up in the budget is really difficult. So we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have to fund a tremendous increment up in salaries and personnel costs just to be able to afford the level of resources, personnel resources that we tell departments, that we tell residents are are in the budget and are available to provide services to them.
Thank you. I got a question about the rate of collecting, for example, for the quarterly taxes, as well as when personal property taxes hit relative to real estate taxes. Who sets those dates? Blythe, do you have a?
Yeah, let me take that one. So Commissioner of the Revenue and the Treasurer work hand in hand for the personal property tax bills to go out. So what we try to do is my office tries to get as many cars in the system as we can run, and we call it a bill run. I'm going to use these are words that we use, that then it creates a file, which then allows Dawn's side of the house to sort of take this from us and mail it out. And we generally try to do that and give citizens at least 6 weeks before the due date. So we try to aim for April, mid-April. We try to get as close to the early April as we can. But again, we're trying to make sure that you have enough time to receive the bill, and the due date is June 5th. And these dates are set by code.
Or is it set by code or council?
Council.
I guess I have to tell you, I've learned a lot tonight as well. And so I just assumed those dates were codified by, I don't know, the state. And it was brought to my attention that, okay, so we have, personal properties due the same time as one of the quarterly real estate. Would it be better to alternate,
So,
et cetera?
Sorry to cut you off, Andrea, but this takes you back. Remember when you were tuning out Greg and he was talking about Dillon's rule?
Yeah.
This ties into that. So the state has told you as a city
Right.
what you're allowed to set. And so that's one of those things. But again, what we're allowed to do in Norfolk may be different than what another locality is allowed to do. Because of that, remember he talked about that Dillon's rule. We're only allowed to do that which the General Assembly says we can do.
I call it the
So-
Mother May I rule.
Correct. The Mother May I rule is a good way to think about it. So in some of these instances, and I'm speaking very broadly, to change these things, we'd have to make sure you're allowed to change them.
Mhm.
And I was not a member of the General Assembly, so I will defer to our Madam Treasurer to clarify. But basically, again, Norfolk has these in place, but they can be changed, but it would have to be with review of them to make sure you're allowed to do it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Don, did you want to chime in on that one?
Well, it also has to do with collection of funds for the budget and his long title to be able to make sure that we're able to pay people and pay our debts and pay things at a certain period of time. So
Right.
it has something to do with that as well.
All wrapped up. There was a good question about taxing nonprofits. How do we handle that? Oh, Pete has unmuted. He's ready to tackle that one.
That one falls in my direction. The city assessor is responsible for what I call institutional exemptions. Those are exemptions by classification or designation. What that means for the layperson is classification is a kind of an automatic exemption, kind of like a church, properties owned by a unit of government, that kind of thing. But then the others are kind of discretionary. Now, just because a property is owned by a nonprofit, it doesn't mean the property is going to be automatically exempt. The property has to be used and occupied for a qualifying purpose. So it's not enough for I'll pick on the church for a second. Just because the church has a vacant lot 3 blocks away, it doesn't mean that vacant lot is going to be exempt. That vacant lot has to be used for a religious qualifying purpose. So our job in my office is to check all of these properties. And if it's not being used, for example, there are a number of churches for sale and are not being used for religious purposes right now. Well, we go out and if we find out about it, we make them taxable.
Interesting. Are there any other questions I've tried to, or things that you all would like to talk about that we haven't necessarily covered? I did put a link. Thank you, Blythe, for the real estate tax relief program. Madam Treasurer, do you have something else that you'd like to share with us?
One thing I just wanted to share with everyone so they can share it with their friends. Your real estate tax. Traditionally, it's a four quarters, every quarter. If your real estate assessment is $400 each quarter, you can pay $100 each month up until the due date. So then it doesn't seem like a burden when you get to the $400 that you have to pay that's due March 31st. If your real estate is $800, you could start paying after you pay in December. So January, you could do 200, February, so that it doesn't seem like it's so hard for you. The reason we do the real estate, the personal property 6 weeks early, because that wasn't the tradition, is so that you can have at least 3 pay periods in order to pay before June 5th when they're traditionally due. So I just want people to keep those things in mind. You can do a partial payment. It's better, in my opinion, because I don't like to pay the convenience fee, to just mail it in or put it in a Dropbox, put your account number on it, and just say partial payment with your account number. And we will put it there so that it will be applied early toward your payment. I just want to get that out to everyone so
That's
you can
great.
share with others. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say again, thank you all for taking your Sunday afternoon, evening with us. Thank you for your contact information. What I heard over and over again is call or email. Email is probably preferable, but please, you're working, your staffs are there 5 days a week. And I also know some of you answer your emails on the weekend. Shame on you. But so do I. I would like to ask folks, if you would like to join us next week, you can register online again. We are going to be talking about the local, the state, and the federal level, how best to advocate with your elected officials, whether you want to talk to them about budgets or taxes, or you have a concern about a law, or you have an idea for a new type of program. It's going to be a great opportunity to talk with those. We've invited Delegate Jackie Glass, and Drew Lumpkin will be, she'll represent the state level, and Drew Lumpkin will be here representing Senator Mark Warner's office, and I will be here too. And you might see a couple of other folks. And then March 20th, 2 weeks from today, Engage Norfolk at Scope in the exhibition hall from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Please join us. Go to engagenorfolk.com and check out the Civic Fair. We have an extraordinary group of folks who've already signed up who are going to be there present. So with that, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. I've learned a lot. I hope you all have as well. And I will put this up on a link on YouTube for others to watch in the future. Everybody have a good night. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.